Good evening, everyone. The Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. And I have an overarching theme that I want to do for this particular rambling rant. And I'm going to try to jump on various topics to circle around back into this one rambling point I'm going to try to make through all this. I made this point during the midterms, and I think probably did it in the last presidential election too. It used to be in this country, or at least in our idealism, that for those political positions that we want people to be in, we want that to be exceptional. Exceptional people held these positions before in our founding fathers. I mean, you can say a lot of things about George Washington. He was also exceptional. You can say about John Adams a lot of things. He had some issues. He was also exceptional. Thomas Jefferson, clearly exceptional. Probably the definition of a jack of all trades who had many vocations that he was practiced in and excelled at. He was a genius. James Madison, etc., etc., etc. But now it seems that top shelf is too far for us to reach anymore, so we just bring ourselves down to mediocre and think that's okay. We see that in our presidential politics, we see that in our congressional and senatorial politics. You see it in how people will just accept whoever's in front of them as long as they have a D or an R next to their name and not care of what the schooling is or if they actually have any, understanding of the topics at hand or the policies at hand that they are having to deal with in these positions of political power that are supposed to be representatives of you. But it almost becomes a George Carlin joke of, if we hate politics so much, we hate politicians because they suck. Well, where do you think they come from? They come from us. They come from American homes, American families, American schools, American churches, and they are raised by Americans, and they practice their thinking, their politics in an American point of view. And so when they go into American politics, that is what you're getting. So in that kind of overarching theme, let's go into a few little issues. One of them is I'm going to be going into a clarification of Robert Hur's report, the special counsel that was investigating Joe Biden on the classified documents. Parts of it has been cherry-picked by right-wing and left-wing medias for their own purposes. People are seizing onto certain aspects of it, ignoring other aspects of it for their tribes, for their political tribes. So I'm going to read. This is a long thing, so I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to just try to do this, try to get as much of the gist as possible, and then go back into my own elaboration of my own points of view and opinion on this. So, let's see. This is from the justsecurity.org. The real Robert Hur report versus what you read in the news. The Special Counsel Robert Hur report had been grossly mischaracterized by the press. The report finds that the evidence of knowing willful violations of the criminal laws is wanting. Indeed, the report on page 6 notes that there are, quote, innocent explanations, unquote, that Hur, quote, cannot refute, unquote. That is but one of the myriad examples we outline in great detail below of the report, repeatedly finding a lack of proof. And those findings mean, in DOJ speak, there is simply no case. Unrefuted innocent explanations is the sine qua non of not just a case that does not meet the standards for criminal prosecution, it means innocence. or as a former Attorney General Bill Barr and his former boss would have put it, a total vindication. Well, we know who his former boss is, but here for real. But even without prompting of a misleading summary by Barr, the press has gotten the lead wrong. This may be because of poorly worded, when we're being charitable, thesis sentence on page 1 of Hur's executive summary. Hur writes at the onset, quote, our investigations uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen, unquote. You have to wait for a later statement that what the report actually says is that there is insufficient evidence of criminality, innocent explanations for the conduct, and affirmative evidence that Biden did not willfully withhold classified documents. Put another way, that same sentence about, quote, our investigations uncovered evidence, unquote, could equally apply to Mike Pence, who had classified documents in his home, which is similarly some evidence of a crime, but also plainly insufficient to remotely establish criminality. The press incorrectly and repeatedly blast out that her report found Biden willfully retained classified documents. In other words, that Biden committed a felony, which some in the news media further trumpeted that the special counsel decided only as a matter of discretion not to recommend charges. To clarify thinking on this topic, let's consider another way Hur could have represented these actual findings on page 1 of his executive summary. Quote, we have concluded that there is not a prosecutable case against Biden, although there is a basis to open investigation based on the fact that classified documents were found in Biden's home and office space. That is insufficient to establish a crime was committed. The illegal retention or dissembling of national defense information requires that he knew of the existence of such documents as that he knew they contain national defense information. It is not a crime without those additional elements. Our investigation, after a thorough year-long review, concludes that there is an absence of necessary proof. Indeed, we have found a number of innocent explanations as to which we found no contrary evidence to refute them and found affirmative evidence in supporting them, unquote. See, what Hur report actually found? Well, we let the Hur report speak for itself for ease of reference. We group the report's findings into several categories. However, we should emphasize one general finding on the outset. The Hur report states, quote, in addition to the shortage of evidence, there are other innocent explanations for the documents that we cannot refute, unquote, on page 6. Given the circumlocution, I don't even know what that word is, in that statement, we need to read it more than once. The statement alone is inconsistent with all the headlines below. On to the more specific findings that they are relevant to the elements of any potential criminal offenses. 1. Lack of evidence or of knowledge of information was classified. Quote, Mr. Biden should have known that by reading his unfiltered notes about classified meetings in a Situation Room, he risked sharing classified information with his ghostwriter. But the evidence does not show that when Mr. Biden shared specific passages with the ghostwriter, Mr. Biden knew the passages were classified and intended to share classified information, which is on page 9 and 10 of his report. We note that this articulation is so reminiscent of James Comey embroidering of the facts, and I actually was thinking about this myself. The bottom line is in the second sentence. The first sentence is irrelevant and serves no prosecutorial purpose, which leaves one to rightly wonder why it was included. Quote, the memo concerning the deliberations for more than 7 years earlier about the Afghani troop surge, and in the intervening years, those deliberations had been widely discussed in public, so Mr. Biden could have reasonably expected that the memo's contents became less sensitive over time, because we cannot prove that he knew the memo was classified when he left office. We cannot prove that retaining the memo, he willfully retained national defense information. On page 221 of this report. Quote, these facts do not support a conclusion that Mr. Biden willfully retained and marked classified documents in these binders. The cover of one binder was marked unclassified and the others had no classification markings, and we cannot show that Mr. Biden reviewed the binders after his vice presidency or knew the classified documents were inside. It is plausible that he retained these documents by mistake. Page 332 to 333 of this report. Quote, in addition, Mr. Biden told us in his interview that he does not recognize the markings confidential as a classified markings. To him, the markings mean the document should be held in confidence, but not necessarily that it is classified. Although confidential is in fact a category of classified information innumerable in the government executive orders, we would likely be unable to refute Mr. Biden's claim that he did not know this. Page 221 to 222 of this report. All right, it goes into this all the details into this, and I would encourage you, if you go onto Middle America on Facebook, find this article. I actually posted it. It's from www.justsecurity.org. This is a rather long, piece by piece breakdown of the Hur's report, but outside of all this, one of the things that is being pulled out of this, that the right is running with and what the left is being pissed off about, is the media's focusing and assertions of her questioning Biden's mental capacity in terms of his memory. Where it was mentioned in this that Hur said that when asked upon Beau Biden's death, which is the president's son, obviously, that President Biden forgot the day that he died. Now, when this report was put in, and this bit of information was included into this, I don't know if it was really all that necessary to use this as an example of claiming the president's mind is faulty or his memory is shaky. Not the claiming that it's not. From my point of view, I've said this repeatedly, that I think he's in decline. But to bringing this particular factoid out as evidentiary examples of that is, sleazy, to say the least. I believe that Robert Hur, who you have to throw out the full disclosure here, was a Trump appointee into the job that he has. That this report is one part professional, 2 parts political. Because some of this stuff I don't think is all that necessary in the basic tenor of what this whole report is saying, is that, yeah, Biden had documents, but there's no evidence, or not evidence that they found, of willful retention or willfully disseminating this information knowing that it was classified to his ghostwriter. As it goes into detail into this article, which I encourage people to go and find. But what was the takeaway that people that took out from it, that Steve Doocy decided to question the President Biden on, is saying, what about your memory problems? Don't you think you're not fit for office? And Biden actually had a great line, is that, yeah, I must have memory problems because I didn't remember that I let you speak. Which was a great line. It was a Doug Brennan line right there. But, you bring all this, heavy information down, and you draw away what you want to take away of it, that you're taking away that Joe Biden is this old codger who forgets. And we can't prosecute him because he's an old codger who forgets. That he forgot. And we just have to accept that. That smacks of James Comey's little right before the election day reporting on Hillary Clinton, because they were investigating her during that presidency election, and that was okay, but if we have to investigate Trump, oh, that's terrible. But James Comey said that she didn't do anything wrong, she just was reckless with the information that she had, but she didn't do anything criminal. Yeah, I mean, that's another political slap while admitting that there was nothing of illegal that was happening. But here we are. And so right-wing media runs with this. They're going after the mental competency of Joe Biden, while in hushed tones they will try to silence anyone who happens to go, oh yeah, well, what about Trump? As they did with the one literal commentator on Fox News when she goes on the 5 or on Hannity, where, you know, when they bring up Joe Biden's mental decline and she brings up the name of Donald Trump, and they try to shout her down on live television while she overpowers that voice long enough to go, he mistook Nikki Haley for Nancy Pelosi on January 6th, that somehow Nikki Haley was in charge of security on January 6th. Okay. He says that multiple times. He continues to say that the true person in power in the White House is President Obama. Now, I think his campaign is, since they can't get him off that dementia of saying that is Obama, they're going to try to run with that and spin it as saying that Obama is the real power behind the White House, so that when he loses his mind to the point of forgetting that Joe Biden is president, he can just say they can just say that, well, he meant Obama because Obama's really in power. It's not the fact that, you know, that he totally forgot that Biden is president. No. You know, it's just that Biden is the one behind the strings, you know, pulling the strings from Martha's Vineyard. Yeah, so that's the spin around. I mean, people who are, it's just they don't want to bring up Trump, but they would go okay with Biden going after that. And this goes back to my overarching thing of what we are striving for our presidents and for our political, for all of our people in politics at this point. You now have in American politics in 2024 the blood feud debate of people of Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and which one is more non-compos mentis. That's where we are at this juncture. Which one is in the most decline? That is obviously in the most decline. This is where we are. People are going back and forth on this, when we should think that this type of thing should be insane. And you know what? I'm never going to agree with Nikki Haley's politics, and I probably wouldn't vote for her if she was the nominee. But I will certainly accept her being president. Even though whatever she says now, no matter how she tries to, you know, gently tap on Trump, which would be her interpretation of actually punching him, she also ultimately says that if Trump is the nom, regardless of what she says about him now, she will vote for him. So there's that. This is what we want in our politics. And this is from 2016, 2020, now 2024. We're having dueling a near 80-year-old and an 80-plus-year-old. This is where we are at, gentlemen and ladies. This is what we want. This is what you want in your politics. You know what? It may be ageist to say it, But again, I go back to we should be striving for our politicians to be, or those who strive to be in positions of power like presidents, and to a certain extent like senators and congressmen or women, to be exceptional. That we should, for the sake of our country, want that. We want the best representing us. But regardless you're going in this direction, Democrat, Republican, Joe Biden, or Donald Trump, they are in decline. The both of them. That is visually obvious. Are we going to really screw down onto the degree? Are we going to have like these gaff-offs where someone on the left will go after every single one of Donald Trump's gaffes and mind farts and delusions and dementias and says, oh, look at all that. With the same token, someone on the right doing the same exact thing towards Joe Biden. You know, if Joe Biden blinks or he looks like he's lost, it's just, look at that. Again, I ask you the question, is this what we want? And I guess it is for our politics. Moving away from this for now. Because I can go into more of this and do the compare and contrasting between Trump and Biden. How while Trump hid his documents, played a shell game with his documents. Investigators come, they hid the documents, and his lawyer claimed that there's no more documents when there were plenty more documents. Where when they're suggesting here in the Hur report that he showed documents either willfully or didn't know to a ghostwriter, Donald Trump is on recording showing classified information to a favorable news media who was interviewing him, and even said on this recording that, you know, he can't declassify it, but it shouldn't matter. But see, I can go back and forth on that, but why? It doesn't really matter at this point in it, does it? Because this is not about America or what's best for America. This is what's best for our tribes. The best for our partisan tribes that we want at all costs to be in power. But if we don't have the total power that is required, that apparently needs to be required, then nothing gets done. And this political exceptionalism, as I said, we're not seeing a president. We're not seeing it in our lower political offices either, in the Senate or the House. At the behest of Donald Trump, there was a bipartisan border deal that also had foreign payments for support to Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan, I believe. At the behest of Donald Trump, that bipartisan deal was scuttled. The House, they talked about this and they were going to scuttle it. It was going to be dead in the water. This border deal that was part of it was going to pay for more border guards, more technology, help put an automatic cap that if so many people, enough people, 5,000 people crossed, then they would immediately shut down the border. President Biden said that this bill passed, he would shut down the border. From what people have said about this border deal, that this had a lot of conservative talking points in it that they wanted, and they still scuttled it. One of the reasons why they scuttled it is because they didn't want their border bill to also be funding the foreign aids like Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan. Okay, well then they separated it and had a foreign bill on its own. That did pass in the Senate, which robbed one of their excuses as to not doing the border bill. Now here's the thing, and this is not supposition, this is not theory crafting, this is not TDS, this is not hypothesis. Donald Trump wanted it scuttled, flat out, for it to be a campaign issue for him to bitch about the border. He did not want anything to be done at the border that could help it, that could fix or solve anything. Because this is not going to solve everything. Obviously, it's not going to. As I've said repeatedly, I'm a broken record. I don't know, it hasn't disintegrated yet, so it still plays. But I'm a broken record of the fact that no one has been serious about the border since the early 90s for the comprehensive immigration reform bill. Since then, 30 years, 30 plus years. Doesn't matter if it was a Republican or a Democrat in the White House. Everybody sucked at the border. And again, broken record, people want to complain and claim that, oh, no, January 2021, oh, that's when the border issue really happened. Fuck you, people. Seriously, Jesus Christ. But the more people will complain about the border, the more that they don't want to do any foreign aid, because why aren't you doing any aid on the border? There's that tired old line. You all proved that you don't really give a shit about the border because you want to give Trump that campaign point. Again, this is not theory. This is not supposition. This is not me pulling this out of the air. It has been said directly that they do not want anything to be done at the border to help secure it, to fix any of the issues, to improve any of the issues, because they want it to be a campaign issue for Donald Trump. See, one thing I noticed about the Biden campaign is that they are pretty savvy when it comes to making their campaign videos, especially when it concerns Donald Trump. And I would not be surprised, and I would be pleased, if they took all this out in the open evidence of Trump and the Republicans, especially his most loyal Republicans, the proof of them not wanting to do a goddamn thing about the border that they have whined about for so long, that they should make a campaign ad and just showing all of it. Showing all of it. Because these Republicans and Donald Trump is lying to their people. In the past few weeks, because of the flagrant lies of them wanting something to be done at the border but doing nothing at the border, had people go and overinflate what was going on with the Supreme Court and agreeing with the Biden administration that there shouldn't be razor wire over the fucking river, so that people would get caught in it and drown, which they have, which is not just scary, scary migrant men, but women and children that died. But somehow we should have a civil war over this. That people were sending out their National Guards and they were waiting for the feds to come with their big shears so that there could be a big standoff. So what do Republicans instead do? Well, they're going to go in and impeach Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security. Impeach him. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. We can do anything. Is that going to stop a single person at the border? No. No, because they're not going to do that. They don't want to do that. They want to do that till after the election. Maybe. Maybe. But they want to impeach him. Last week they tried to impeach him. They couldn't impeach him. They just didn't have enough votes for it. It was man on man. Yesterday they did impeach him. They did. Yeah. Because Steve Scalise decided to come back to town. So they impeached him by a whopping 1 vote. And they were lucky to impeach him at the hour that they did, because George Santos's seat that he was expelled from was won by a Democrat. So that 1 vote, had that vote had happened a few hours later, oh, that would have been nullified. Then you would have had a block of 214. The vote was 214 to 213. Well, what a mandate. Wow. And people are clinking champagne glasses, and they're all over social media how they impeached Mayoras. Yay! Yay! Because that's going to die in the Senate. He is not going anywhere. But that really didn't matter, did it? Because that was their attempt of doing something, and them whining about doing something when clearly it's not going to do anything. Here's the one thing, and this is what I've been thinking about the last few days. One of the things that I'm going to blame Democrats on, especially during the Trump era, is they helped devalue and dilute the concept and the process of impeachment. Now, do I agree with the reasonings for impeachment of Donald Trump? Yes. But impeachment, if you're impeaching but you are not convicting, that is useless. Oh, we can make the jokes that he's a double impeached president. Yay. Yay. Yeah, but that doesn't change anything. That doesn't prevent him from becoming, being on the ticket and becoming president again. No, not without conviction or removals. But it started with the Democrats in this. You can say, to be fair, on my Democratic side, we can make the claim that it really started under Ken Starr and the impeachment of Bill Clinton, if you really want to. And the reason why you can do that is because the concept of impeachment is one of these things where if you're going to do it, you got to get all your ducks in a row. You got to make sure you are confident that whatever you succeed in the House, you and your House managers, your impeachment managers, can convince the Senate, because the Senate, to convict, is 2/3 of the vote. And why, despite me agreeing with the reasoning behind the impeachments of Donald Trump, how I disagreed with the impeachment in practice, because there was never going to be 2/3 of the vote for Donald Trump. Not with the configuration of the Senate where it is. It happened twice. And escaped both times, because there wasn't going to be 2/3. Now impeachment is now down to cabinet officials. Because the impeachment concept of Joe Biden, that wasn't going anywhere, and they realized that, and their Hunter Biden investigation was also not going really anywhere. And when Hunter Biden showed up, and that caused them to clutch their pearls and be dramatic about it, until he soon Marjorie Taylor Greene got up and he just fuck you, and walked out, which he could. And they made a big deal about that as melodrama. Played them like a tune. But the Hunter Biden thing, Joe Biden thing for impeachment, it's not going anywhere. And besides, when you think about it, because like I said, if you can't get 2/3 of the Senate, it doesn't much matter if you impeach him or not. You can call him impeached. Hey, you're impeached. Yeah, you're still in office. Mayorkas will still be in office because there will be no conviction. You can line up every Republican and vote to impeach Mayorkas in the Senate. You would have to have at least 1/3 of the Democrats to do the same. And that's not going to happen. But I blame both sides on the dilution of the concept of impeachment. And again, it is a regrettable state of our politics where you can't impeach a man who did what he could and did nothing that he could when January 6th happened, and after he revved up the crowd and they went marching to the Capitol, and where the crowd, those who stayed behind the barricades, they were protesters. They were righteously protesting, and they had every right to. Those who went past the barricades, that went to the door, that broke into the door, that broke into the windows, that walked into the halls, that was threatening the lives of congressmen, senators, the vice president, all on the word of Donald Trump and Donald Trump's allies, who all revved them up, telling them this was the 1776 moment on the day of the certification, so you can claim it's an insurrection because it was trying to stop a political proceedings that would confirm Joe Biden's successful election and installation as president. And Donald Trump gave aid and comfort to these people by not sending the National Guard. No matter how much you can blame Nancy Pelosi for not wanting 10,000 troops to be there, the explanation, as I understood it, was not some deep state clandestine thing where the deep state is through their agents in the FBI and Black Lives Matter and Antifa were among the crowd to cause this chaos in the Capitol to interrupt the certification vote for Joe Biden. That was not going to be going towards Trump, that there was no advantage for Biden for this to be done by any agent. Because, logic takes a holiday for some people. But despite the fact that she didn't want the 10,000, and the reasoning behind it was that when the previous Black Lives Matter protests came, it was an army presence. There were troops and fatigues out there, guns waiting, lined up, because Black Lives Matter was there. That's scary. Ooh. But Trump supporters, if Nancy Pelosi had asked for that, for those National Guardsmen, then the politics of the day would say, well, she's just going after them Trump supporters. All of them is just threatening Trump supporters right there. So she actually gave more respect to the Trump supporters and protesters by not having a visual army presence there that Trump and his minions had towards the Black Lives Matter that came previous. She didn't want the same visual representation. And somebody took advantage of that. Which is why, despite calls from the local governors like Northam and Hogan in Maryland that wanted to activate the National Guard to go into D.C., Trump ignored them. He ignored his own family in telling him to ignored his allies like Hannity and others who told him to tell them to leave. And one of the things that I always go back to is that no matter how damning it is for him not to call the National Guard, which protects them. When he did finally tell them to leave, they left. I don't understand why that point is not made more, why that does not resonate to people. They could have left if he told them to as soon as the first barricade was breached, when the first window was broken into, was when the first door was broken into, when they walked into the halls, when they tried to get into the chamber and Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed. That could have been prevented by the person that sent them. And he did nothing. But when he told them to go, they left. I cannot make this any clearer, and I am disappointed in people that don't. And he gives aid and comfort to them after the fact, as he now calls these people, they need to release the Jan 6 hostages. I call them hostages because they're hostages. No, they're not hostages. As many of them themselves, I've already said that they were in there at the behest of Trump. You don't have to directly order someone to incite somebody, and they were incited to go in. They were told to fight like hell for their country. We have seen the evidence of such incitement. We have seen the evidence of such incitement at the border during the Trump administration, where one guy decided to take a trip across Texas to go to El Paso to, as he put it, stop the invasion, stop the invaders, using the same words that Trump used in his various ramblings on social media about migrants and caravans and so forth. I wish we were not in this situation. And I'm not talking about just because Trump is back. I'm talking about Trump, Biden, how these are our choices, that our institutions of our political powers cannot wrench themselves away to not have more options present. Again, as I circle around again to this, is that American politics is supposed to be reserved for the most exceptional amongst us. That's how we started. But now we don't seem to care about that. We don't seem to want to be exceptional, or even want our leaders to be exceptional. Our leaders are saying that it's snobbish to go to college, that you don't need to go to college. And if you go to college, you get indoctrinated in some liberal thinking. You know what? I didn't go to any Ivy League college. Hell, I didn't really finish college. On the resume, I checked the box that said some college, because I did do some college. But none of my professors was trying to bend my mind one way or another. I took classes like information system, economics, intro to law enforcement, sociology, which was one of the classes I actually passed. Passed well, because I actually enjoy the idea of observational studies of people. Is it because they want people in politics, or in power in politics, to be reflectant of the people. Is this a circular argument then? That people in power don't want the people themselves to be critical thinkers who do go to college, who do become exceptional, because they might see the facade that's in front of them, of their people that's supposed to represent them. So they tell them, don't go to college. You don't have to better yourself. You're just as good as the way you are. And if something is not happening in your life that you think it should, it's somebody else's fault. It's the other. I mean, what was it, 30, 40, 50 years ago we would claim that it was like, you didn't get that job, well, that was because of affirmative action. So they just sent some black guy, some black woman to do the job with half of your experience, even though that black man or black woman probably had just as much experience and just as much education, or maybe even more than the person. But never mind all that now. Never mind there's like qualifications. No, it's because they needed to fill a quota. I mean, how many times have we heard that shit? I mean, hell, people whine about affirmative action going up into the 90s and to 2000s on up. I mean, it was a joke in the movie Undercover Brother as to why was the white guy Lance in the Undercover Brother organization, and the head of the organization says, "What can I say, man? Affirmative action." Why is it that we do not want exceptional people? And I'm talking about the we in terms of we, as in the voters who are trying to find people to represent us, at least at the presidential level, and we're accepting the hands that we are dealt. I'm not much of a Joe Biden fan. I'm pretty much a critic on him on a number of things. I am not blind to the fact that he's in decline. I'm not a ride or die Biden person. I'm not jumping on my sword in defense of Biden. I am clearly no fan of Trump. I had 3 other people in the last election that I wanted to go for, and none of them panned out, and it was just Biden and Trump, and that was the hands we were dealt. I don't know if I can do that again, to be honest. I don't know if I can see myself with my concerns of how we are going as a country in terms of our politics. I don't know if I can do that again. We've lost our desire to see our leaders be exceptional. I don't know when that happened. Certainly these leaders and down the line of our political representations in our Congress and our Senate doesn't seem to be all that representative of us either. Or if they are, just see what they're representing. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. I don't know. I'm now in rambling mode. Sorry, guys. It's at 4:22 in the morning. Jesus Christ. But let me try to land the plane here as I'm stuttering here. I wish we were allowed to have better choices, but that's the thing, we're not. when I think about the Republican Party and what they should do in terms of excising itself from Trump, regardless of how I feel about the Republican Party and how I don't really agree much with the Republican Party, before Trump came along and before this permissive behavior that he'd had that he was able to succeed with, so there the people started to mimic, and then therefore they no longer needed to act like adults, needed to act like they had responsibility over their own mind and over their own words and their own fucking mouths, that they could say whatever they want with no repercussions because their dear leader is doing the same thing. And they can live vicariously through him. So they can act like stupid, stunted, emotional children when they're 60 and 70 and 80 years old, like dear leader. But you at least, even if you disagreed with a Republican or a Republican president or so forth, you at least had the sense that even though you're disagreeing with them and they're not doing what you think they should be doing, they're still thinking they're doing it for the country. Even if you disagreed with them, or even if they disagreed with you. It's just their point of view is what they thought was needed for the country, and that's what they were running for. But this is what we have now. Is flies in the face of all the values they claim to have, and which makes that irrelevant and bullshit. I think the Republican Party should have done is, excise themselves from Donald Trump, not vote for Donald Trump, don't even vote for Biden, just not vote for Donald Trump. Put any other name in there. If you're wanting to vote, if you need to vote. But it's like deny them the power. It's the same thing as it comes to, like, say, like if you really, really have a big problem with what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza. You can separate, as we have to always pull throughout this disclaimer for those who are critics of this government doing this insane, horrible, and I dare say evil action in Gaza. And the people who are the apologists and claiming that, in defense of Israel, then they get a blank check of whatever they do. Well, they're doing some pretty horrific shit. And it's not just the bombings of, like, civilian targets, bombing of refugee camps of people that getting displaced that they were trying to displace. There's fucking torture going on now. But you can separate the actions of the Israeli government with the Israeli people and their faith. So it's not an anti-Semitic thing to be honest about this government, while at the same time we can walk and chew gum at the same time, still want the Israeli people to be safe and not be attacked, not have Hamas down their throat trying to throw rockets at them. But at the same token, on the flip side of that token, every Palestinian is not Hamas, and claiming they are is wrong. So that's the flip side of that. But you can't make the separation of the two. But people in this country who can't even make this honest argument between the Israeli government and the Israeli people for fear of the anti-Semitism, and they're afraid to not show their support or be advocates for supporting Israel, the Israeli government, because if they want to question or say boo about the Israeli government, then they might lose support of the lobby that is a strong lobby in this, that both Democrats and Republicans benefit from with donor money. And again, if it's going towards the Israeli government that is completely different than the people and the faith. And I know people want to be lazy, try to lump this all together. But it's not. There was a separation. I dare say the people in power in the Israeli government is acting more like those who were torturing and shunting people off into camps. That was their grandfathers and their grandmothers. They're acting like that in that government. Not the people, the government. But people who are so sycophantic to their donor money and their donor class can't say anything near what I just said. So they will just put the slogans on, they'll put the flag on, and just be, gung-ho in the support of. If you have a problem with Russia invading Ukraine, but don't seem to have a problem with Israel invading Gaza, then you're a little bit of a hypocrite. But again, what can you do about that? What can you do against this particular type of lobby? You can deny that power. You can deny that money, not deny that donor money. You rip away people's power who think that they can make you beholden to them. See, one of the things I've noticed over the years of Donald Trump from his presidency on up is that especially those people who are supporters of him, is that he not only has allies, but he makes sure his allies are beholden to him, that their financial futures are linked to him. So if they do anything that he is displeased by, he can cut them off, or he can throw them under the bus. They have to be sycophantically loyal to him. Well, the same token, this particular lobby that people are so pearl clutching over has people beholden to them for their donor money. Well, deny that. There's plenty of other places that you can go to get funds and to get money from your Republican or Democratic power bases should be able to siphon enough money for you to run your campaigns. You can deny, not take a dime, and then you take away the power. But is that even realistic? I don't know. See, I'm going around random directions here. Sorry about that. And because it is a random rambling rant. That's what happens at 4:30 in the morning. But like this particular lobby, I'm specifically not naming the lobby because, quite frankly, the misconception of what I'm saying will come out as, oh, well, guess what that makes you? No, it's not, because I don't think that way. But I do think that people will use their influence and power and money to silence the doubters and silence the criticism if they want to gain benefit of their donors. And I will dare say that this particular lobby has more in league with the government than it does the people. And as I already stated, that I separate the government from the people and the people with their faith. I believe there should be an age limit when it comes to being president of the United States. Flat out, I do. I'm not saying Joe Biden's a bad man because of his age. I'm not saying Donald Trump is a bad man because of his age. I think Donald Trump is a bad man for various other reasons, but not his age. I think Joe Biden has a lot of issues that I don't agree with, and I would not vote for him, but not necessarily due to his age as a discriminating factor. But I do say that the age does matter. If we continue to vote the way we do, and no matter how old our candidates are, we need to be ride or die, because each one of these elections is the most important elections of our lives, somehow. And we don't allow ourselves to have more choices in the matter, and then we just sort of anoint and move on. And people are this old or still running for president or are president. They get into decline. It's a natural state. It is not an insult. It's not disparaging. It is actually being respectful to point it out. You know, what does that say about us as a people, especially us in terms of our politics, is that we are so desperate to keep our control of power that we will put up somebody who is not is in the best form, someone who is declining in faculties due to age, but we still want that power, we still want that position, so we will just turn a blind eye to it. That someone that could be suffering, we will still prop them up to be on the spotlight for 4 years. Or we vote for them and hope to God that they have good people around them that could lead them from one point to another and have them look in one direction or say certain lines here and there that they can handle him. Presidential handlers, because of age and diminishing faculty. That says a lot about us that is very, very poor. Poor of our own judgment, poor of our own class. And even pointing that out, if you all admitted to yourselves of that, does that even change anything? I don't know if it would. I wonder, way back when, at the time of the Ides of March when Julius Caesar was assassinated, did those Roman senators think that people would thank them? That they would prevent the Roman Republic to becoming the Roman Empire? That they would be considered heroes? That they were the saviors of Rome, of what this despotic dictator for life, Julius Caesar, was going to be when he became the first emperor? Or fear what Cleopatra would do with their child? Whatever. Did any of them have stopped and think that, that would not be the case, that regardless of the extreme action that they did to save Rome, had the exact opposite effect of what they wanted to do? Not only that they were not considered heroes, they were considered traitors, they were hunted down. Many of them took their own lives. Many of them fought against the retribution of Rome on the battlefield. They weren't considered heroes. And the empire that they were fearful that was going to come under Julius Caesar came under Octavius Augustus Caesar, one of their own senators, who had no part in the assassination, but nonetheless was a critic of Cleopatra and the relationship that was happening between Cleopatra and Julius, because Caesarion, their child, would have been the direct heir to him, and of course that's a political threat, which we find out later he dealt with. Did they know that the decline was coming? Do we know our decline is here? There's no turning back from the Trump era here. Even if he loses again in 2024, he will go away as effectively as he went away in 2020. And who's to say that in 2028, at the venerable age that he will be, that people will still prop him up to run again? That his aging fan base, the fan base that would be there at that point of how many years, would want him back in the White House again. That conspiracy theories and election fraud and this and that and all the drama that has kept us from doing anything in this country will continue on. One of the great falls of our country is our fall of the concept of compromise. The American genius was compromise. It staved off a civil war for over 30 years with the Great Compromise. We wouldn't have had a Declaration of Independence without the compromise. We wouldn't have how the Constitution came about after the Articles of Confederation without compromise. Most of our major laws and bills does not come out with everyone agreeing that everything that you ever possibly wanted was in any of these bills or any of these laws. No, it always is conditional. It always is compromised. Because we are all not the same people. We are all not Democrats. We're all not Republicans. And we disagree. But disagreement is not a death penalty to a country, as it apparently seems to be now. Again, when it comes to a bill that goes into law, a successful one, it is proposed, one side makes concessions, the other side makes concessions, some get something that they want, others get what they want, they agree, they vote, they pass, they take 2 steps forward in progress. No one gets everything they want. It used to be adult to understand that this is not an all or nothing situation for most of our politics. But we forgot that. Somewhere down the line we forgot that. And once again, I circle back to the original premise that we do not strive for exceptionalism anymore. Not in our leadership and not in ourselves. I am amongst that, in that failings. I wish I had the exceptional drive, the drive to succeed, to aspire for the things that I would want. But I didn't. I'm 45 now. You know, people may say, oh, it's not too late. It's not too late to do this. It's not too late to do that. Maybe that's true. But one of the great sins, that very uncovered sin, is that I suffer from is the sin of being comfortable. Living the comfortable life. Not really advancing, not really falling back. Existing, living, breathing, being comfortable. And perhaps we are too comfortable. We're too comfortable enough that we will allow a circus clown to represent us as a president for 4 years. We're too comfortable enough to allow another man in his decline to represent us for 4 years, as opposed to the myriad of other choices that we had in the 2020 election that we could have voted for, that evidently was simply not good enough for someone who was the youngest senator in American history when he became senator, to being the oldest president in American history as president. Maybe we got too comfortable with the ideas that we don't need to look into our politicians that deeply, that we don't need to scrutinize people's records that deeply, that it doesn't matter, this is all entertainment. We lost that exceptionalism in our politics, in our everyday life. Necessity is the mother of invention. And those who feel that necessity, that feels and marginalized, it's funny how those are also the people that certain people on certain political spectrums demonize the most, because those people who are living in that necessity, that lives in that necessity so much that they have multiple jobs to support them and their families, are migrants. Legal or illegal, because I don't think it much matters. Not to these people who say that it matters, but then they do absolutely nothing for the border because of politics. Alright, 1 hour and 11 minutes that I've been rambling about something vague. American politics and exceptionalism, and the lack thereof. That's what it was. The Ranter rants because what the hell do I do else at 4:44 in the morning? I'll probably do another one next week, and a whole horde of other wonderful issues that we can talk about. Maybe about immunity, maybe about Supreme Court, laughing out the concept of disqualification, even though the guy justifiably should be disqualified. But again, American politics, common sense doesn't exist.